Present.
Austin is excused. He won't be able to join us today. Erin Goodman. Reverend Patricia Hunter.
Present.
Tasha Johnson.
Here.
Esther Lucero. Asha Muhammad. Mark Mullins.
Officer Mullins is here. Thank you.
Erica Newman.
Here.
Dr. Naven Pinto. Elena Santillan. I believe Elena was the last person to join. Elena, if you can unmute yourself, let me know. I just want to verify.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. Joseph Saya. Catherine Seibel. I believe Catherine is also here. Catherine, if you're here, can you unmute yourself and let me know? Thank you.
I'm here.
Perfect. Douglas Wagner.
Here.
Reverend Harriet Walden.
Here. Present.
All right. And LaJaya Washington is also currently still on leave. Okay. I'd like for us now to review the agenda and approve. I wanted to note that there was an amended agenda that was sent to everyone. And I want to publicly note that one section was altered under the behavioral health update. We had anticipated you all were going to review a work plan today. That has been pushed out to the next meeting. So the only thing that has changed is the word work plan has been removed. We will not discuss it in today's meeting. Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
This is Alina. I'll file a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Douglas. I'll second.
Can I get someone to approve the CPC draft amendments?
You have to ask all the people in favor to say, because they approved it. So
I'm sorry. Yep. Thank you.
that's okay.
My
It's
apologies.
all right.
Yeah,
all right.
thank you so much. So for all of those in favor of approving the amended draft agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Is there anyone that's opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Agenda approved. Now moving on to, is there anyone to put forth a motion to approve the CPC draft minutes?
I move that the minutes be accepted as presented.
Is there anyone to second?
This is Catherine. I second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? Thank you. I'm going to turn public comment over to Jesse.
All right. If you'd like to register for public comment, please email ocpc@seattle.gov. That's ocpc@seattle.gov with public comment in the subject line. Public commenters will get 2 minutes. Right now we have 2 people signed up, and we'll start with Howard. Howard, you should be able to use your mic. Thank you, Howard. And our next will be Valerie, and you should be able to unmute.
Good morning, CPC. I'm following up in my public comment of August 17th and my email to the entire CPC of August 24th. That email hasn't been acknowledged, but I hope you all received it. Those messages were regarding the South Seattle Emerald article of August 9th about a whistleblower complaint that was filed with the city regarding the Office of the Inspector General. The article is headlined OIG Auditor Resigns, claims OIG puts OPA allegiances over police accountability. The whistleblower resigned over concerns that the Inspector General and the Deputy Inspector General of the OIG have quashed criticism of flawed OPA investigations. The article also has detailed allegations by the whistleblower and an attorney that the OPA obtained and published medical information without a complainant's consent. That would be illegal. These allegations are made by two serious people working within the system. At least one of them is a lawyer. Everyone concerned with police accountability in Seattle should be aware of the whistleblower complaint and the allegations revealed in the Emeralds article. The allegations put all the investigations done by the OPA and the oversight of the OIG in doubt. So I ask all of you in the CPC to acknowledge it in your next meeting, well, which would be today, minute it, and take action. A public hearing would be a very good and appropriate response. Judge Robart did not mention the complaint in the consent decree status conference on August 10th. I think he didn't know about it at the time. So I also requested that the CPC use its amicus status with the court to notify the judge of the Emerald article and the whistleblower complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Let me make sure that no one else additionally has signed up for public comment real quick by checking the email. It does not appear so we're done with public comment.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Dr. Gale, and thank you, Valerie. I want to say, we are also aware of the South Seattle Emerald article detailing a complaint against the Office of the Inspector General. As it is a complaint which may be under investigation, we cannot comment on it at this time. However, those allegations are serious and we are monitoring the situation closely. And we want to thank you for your public comment at this time. Department updates. Is anyone here from City Council? Is anyone here from the mayor's office to provide any department updates? Okay. Monitoring team?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Since the last meeting of the CPC, the monitoring team has been primarily concerned with meeting with entities like DOJ and OIG with primary focus on use of force data and the recent city council less lethal legislation. That has been a primary focus of our discussions and our considerations, along with the ongoing revisions to methodology and the monitoring plan. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Ron. Department of Justice?
Good morning. I have been out of the office and I'm just returning myself. So I don't have anything to add to Ron's update, but I'm here to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you for that, Christina. Commissioners, do you all have any particular questions? If not, then we will hear from the Office of Inspector General.
Good morning. I do have a few updates for you. as you know, we're short on staff in the investigative review unit. And so giving you an early heads up that this means that there will be impacts to deadlines. We're monitoring those closely and our ability to fulfill those obligations. And really appreciate the professionalism with which OPA has been responding to our request to accommodate the sudden pressures we're experiencing and the need to work on how we organize and prioritize these cases. We are in the process of hiring. And so there's both a temp and a regular and a supervisor position that are open. And those, at least 2 of those are currently available on seattle.gov/jobs. Welcome to forward that to anyone who might be interested. We hope to be interviewing for some of those in the very near future. And that also will necessarily have impacts to our comments on the OPA policy manual. So apologies to OPA on that front. But looking forward to hearing what CPC has to say on that, and happy to share collectively our thoughts on that as well as those are being developed. So we hope to get those to them sometime this week. So that's on the investigative front. Also, we are starting the next stage of our civilian sworn study. As you know, that's mandated on the ordinance as a body of work as well. And one of the things our staff mentioned was an interest in talking and interviewing potentially some CPC members or former CPC members to get some of that history. So I noted with the turnover that perhaps a good person to start with might be Reverend Walden. So I hope that's okay. I asked them to drop you an email just in terms of if you or Brandy, perhaps you might have thoughts of who would be good contacts just to get some of that institutional knowledge of what CPC had been hoping to get out of it to ensure that we are tracking that interest. And then finally, the other thing that we've been working on, just a point of information, I know you are active in the state legislative agenda and your work in Olympia historically, and we are this year, we're not going to issue official recommendations. What we are going to do is we're going to offer technical assistance on those bills that have a direct intersection with accountability or any particular expertise that our staff have from the reports that they have been generating. So if that is of potential interest or help to you as you are doing your state legislative agenda work, happy to talk on any of those bills. I'm sure that we're all tracking the same ones. So that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, let's get you connected to the policy team so we can start beginning that conversation. Thanks so much.
Cool, sounds good.
Office of Police Accountability.
Good morning, everyone. I was asked to update the CPC on the investigation into the shooting death of Terry Caver. So I'll just really quickly go through OPA's investigation and what we found. So basically what we did was we really divided the case into 2 aspects. First, de-escalation, and second, the ultimate use of deadly force. For de-escalation, we looked at the various elements of the, so for example, engaging in tactical or applying time distance and shielding, and the other elements of de-escalation. We found that the primary officer who responded to the call did fail to de-escalate in virtually every respect. This officer was a K-9 officer, and some of the problems that we identified were that he emerged from his car with the K-9 and stood in the path of Mr. Caver, and by doing so, functionally eliminated any time distance and shielding he had. There was nowhere to go, and Mr. Caver was walking directly into his path. There was a lack of communication, no pre-planning, no discussions about where people would be positioned. And then once Mr. Caver approached him, the officer took affirmative steps towards Mr. Caver and followed him closely as he walked away, all without at that point having other backup available. So there was just a substantial number of problems that we saw, and for those reasons, we sustained the allegation of de-escalation and found that the officer violated policy. In evaluating the use of deadly force, we noted that it was more likely that force would be used because of the tactics, and obviously that was a problem addressed in the context of de-escalation. But from watching the video, what's clear is that prior to the shooting occurring, Mr. Caver turned around very quickly and swept out with his knife, and at that point the shots were fired. So in looking at that allegation, what we determined was that at that instant, the officer was entitled lawfully to use deadly force because of the threat posed to his life. So that was not sustained, and what we ended up doing was issuing a policy recommendation asking the department to take a couple steps. First, to completely revamp and modify its training surrounding individuals with knives. This is something that we've all talked about before, and it's an area that SPD and frankly no other department really trains well at this point. I mean, I guess you could look internationally for models, but in the United States, it's a problem for all police departments. So asking the department to modify its training and to make the training more robust, and particularly to deal with situations that are in flux and where people are moving quickly and where situations change very quickly, and to allow officers to build up muscle memory and experience in those types of situations. We also asked the department to consider some other possible less lethal tools. So the two that we have thought about are both something called a net gun and then a bowler wrap. And for some CPC commissioners, I know you had a demonstration of the bowler wrap. Both have problems and neither are perfect, but at the same time, adding different tools to that continuum of force, along with the 40 millimeter and the taser, to have other tools we think would be a benefit and possibly would reduce fatal shootings or shootings at all. So we still have one aspect of the case that's open. One of the officers that fired shots left SPD and moved to another police department. We are trying to interview him, and we've asked him to consent to an interview. If he does not consent, we'll move forward with the interview, with closing the case without interviewing him and reach findings based on the fit interview and the remainder of the record. So that's where we stand. SPD is already moving forward with that policy recommendation. And we've been working collaboratively with them. So we're hopeful that even if the training that they roll out now is going to be a virtual training, that they'll do an in-person training once COVID restrictions have lifted, to again allow officers to actually be in the field and running through these trainings to ensure hopefully better outcomes. But happy to answer any questions about that if available from the commission. Hi, Reverend Walden.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions. I mean, how many officers discharged their weapon?
2.
Okay, and also, was any of those officers might have been multiple shooters?
I believe the officer who received the sustained finding was a multiple shooter.
Okay, because that's a problem, and we've talked about.
Yeah, something you've identified before, Reverend. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a problem that has to be handled on some kind of way that most shootings on most departments are multiple shooters. I mean, you got officers been there for 30 years that have the same threat, can feel the same threat level and does not discharge their weapon. So I don't know. I mean, maybe, it's just something that has to be aired, has to be talked about, because if you go through every case from time that we've been doing this, most of the officers who've done the shooting have been multiple shooters and that stuff. So anyway, I just want to put that out there because I think the community, I think that's something that we need to be talking about and how, how to work with that. So,
Ramon, was that something that I know that this is not new. This is something we've discussed before. My understanding was that there was some work going on with CPC. Is not correct? Were you all looking at it or assessing it?
We were looking at that, and then we've had some changes and things like that, and so we got a great policy team now. I mean, they're just outstanding, and maybe that's something that we can talk about, and they can begin to look at that. But also, I mean, if you come up with you look at that, then how can then there's recommendations, but how can you change the situation but I think number one, we have to find out how many multiple shooters there are. And some of them, like you say, that some of the people probably already left and going to take that same idea someplace else. So anyway, but I'll talk to the, I mean, we can probably have some more discussion around this in our community, in our meetings, and also with the with Brandy, and also with the policy team to see just see how they can look at this work. And it's something that's something that we surely needs to look at. And then we also have Officer Mullen. So we have a police officer here with us. Also might have some input and want to talk about that also. So thank you so much.
Right. One thing I'll note is that we, pursuant to the agreement we have with the CPC, I think we're preparing right now, if it hasn't already been transmitted, we're preparing to transmit the case file for this one to the CPC for your review. Because under the ordinance, all closed case files can be reviewed by the CPC after the fact for systemic issues. So that will be presented to you shortly. We have another OIS, the Alaskan Way OIS, which is very similar, and that one is still going through the process, but I imagine will be closed somewhat shortly too, and you will also get notice of that case, and we will send the file for that one as well.
Thank you.
I believe Catherine has a question.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your update on policy recommendations. I was curious to learn if those recommended policy changes include anything explicit around improving response to behavioral health crisis or symptoms of mental illness.
So the policy recommendations that I made do not specifically call out mental illness, but what I would say is they do, in a respect, insofar as I would say the majority of these cases involving an individual with a knife do have a mental illness component to them. So, I think insensibly referred to as suicide by cop, but there are situations where people are mentally ill or causing harm to themselves. So I think any training, and this is something that I will note for the department, so thank you, Catherine, but any training should accentuate that aspect, and this is part of the de-escalation policy, is have you considered whether the person's failure to comply or their decision-making or their actions are the fruits of mental illness or the results of mental illness? So certainly that is an element that officers need to consider when deciding how to position themselves, how to communicate with individuals. And this also goes to the point, and one thing that we saw that kind of went wrong, both in this case and frankly in the Alaskan Way shooting that happened a couple months later, is orders and repeated orders versus open communication. And that's something that I'm hopeful that the department will integrate into this training, and something that they've already indicated that they will consider.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Douglas?
Thanks. And Officer Mullins, were you trying to raise your hand too?
Yes, can you hear me?
You can go ahead. You can report me.
Director Meyerberg, I heard you say something about communicating more with the suspect in terms of an edged weapon, communicating with the suspect rather than barking orders. I can understand that, and that sounds like something that we probably need to work on. But as far as tactics are concerned, with an edged weapon, what possibly could we do more in terms of tactics and training to try to protect ourselves from knives? Knives are taught to us in the academy are the most deadly weapon that we can face. And it also, a lot of people think that we're trained to disarm people with knives, which we are not. A lot of people think that our vests will stop edged weapons. We have a vest, we have a bulletproof vest on, and that's going to stop the knife from cutting us or hurting us. Knives will go through our vests. Knives will kill us, and if we don't have enough distance from people when they attack us, we're in deep trouble. So what other tactics are they suggesting? They took the 40 millimeter away from us. We can't use it anymore. We're running out of things to be able to protect ourselves on the street from knives.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, so from my perspective, and I agree with everything you've said, Mark, so no disagreement from me. I mean, I think my biggest concern with both this case and the Alaskan Way case is people, it's decision making that eliminated time, right? And I think what I've seen over and over again in de-escalation cases, and what's become clear to me more and more over time is that, and not to use time multiple times, but is that the faster an incident moves, the more likely it is that something is going to go sideways. With knife cases, I think time and distance are the two most important things. You want to, and for example, in the Alaskan Way shooting, what we saw was before the latter two officers responded, what the officers had done was actually perfect. The Port of Seattle officers and the other officers had created a plan where they were following an individual into a not populated area. They were around 70 feet back. They had a 40 millimeter. They were talking to him and just allowing things to evolve. Obviously, if community members come out and there's a danger, you're going to have to act more quickly. But I think what we want are tactics that increase time and distance. One of the problems that I've seen over and over again, and you know this, is that the muscle memory is not there. So officers may get one repetition, if that, a year in these types of trainings. And the trainings are in the annex, right? Or they're in a building where you're in this sterile training and you're supposed to then take those lessons to the street. What I'm proposing is that it's a broader training and that take people to Tukwila, take people to areas that they've never seen before, put them out on long stretches of street and change the scenario. Have people run at you, have people walk away from you. You have to get practice in these situations or you're not going to do them well. And then the expectation that officers are going to be able to respond in 5 seconds to a situation that they've never seen before, they're still going to be held accountable. But in some respects, I don't know that makes a lot of sense. So the 40 millimeter, taking the 40 millimeter away is a huge problem in my mind. I think it cannot just be a tool for SWAT. It has to be a tool for patrol and SWAT. And frankly, in my mind, it's more important for patrol than it is for SWAT. There's nothing else that the SPD has that creates standoff distance where you can have 100 feet, 150 feet between yourself and a person. Tasers have a low usage rate and a low effectiveness rate, particularly in Seattle when it's raining and people have jackets on. The bolo wrap and the neck gun, I like them, but they're untested and we don't know how they're going to work. And every other tool, you have to be within close proximity of someone, so it's not a good idea. Again, because of what you said with the knife. So there's a lot of things that can be done, right? There are steps that can be taken, but it's going to be developing robust training practice and allowing officers to have tools that create distance. I mean, those are my answers. And this is not rocket science, right? But I think it's doing them well and doing them effectively is the key.
And I have been present when the 40 millimeter was used, and it works. It keeps us from having to use our handguns, which is
I agree.
Which is the ultimate goal. We don't want to kill anyone. We would like to render them so that we can take them into custody.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, like I think I agree with what you're saying, and I think what I'm hopeful is that SPD's training that they will develop will be a type of training that will have more fluid situations that will again build up muscle memory, and it's just got to be mandatory, and officers need to be out there doing it, or else I think expecting different outcomes is unrealistic.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, Douglas.
Thanks, Andrew. I really like the idea of increasing and kind of diversifying those type of in the field de-escalation trainings. I think that makes a lot of sense. My question was, I'm wondering, so, you know, the findings of the OPA were that an officer violated SPD policy in this incident. And so I'm just wondering, like, what are the consequences of that, like, finding? Like, what does that actually mean for that individual officer?
For the individual officer, what it means is that he was suspended for 20 days and he was transferred from the canine unit to another unit to be determined. So that's the specific penalty for that officer. More globally, though, I think the goal or the hope is that this is a paradigm shift for officers. You know, I think since I've been an OPA, and I think in as far as I know, in the history of police accountability, or at least the recent history of police accountability in Seattle, there's very few shootings that have been found out of policy. There was the East Lake shooting, which was in 2017. This shooting, and I'm assuming the Ian Burke shooting, even though I don't think it went through the IIS at that point. What I'm hopeful is that this will hopefully inform officers to say that these types of responses, the off the cuff, no communication, bad positioning, bad tactics responses just can't occur anymore. And I hopefully it changes behavior. So, with discipline, the tricky part of discipline is you can look at it two ways. What happens to the individual officer, right? And then kind of systematically or systemically, what happens to the department? And frankly, I'm more concerned with what happens to the department, because if you're going to change behavior, that's the way to go. So I don't know. That was a circuitous answer, Douglas. But I'm not sure if I was able to respond to your question.
No, you definitely did. Thank you. And I realize that, your recommendations are then in terms of discipline, are then for SPD to implement. But I just want to say, like, on the record, it just doesn't feel like, if someone violating policy that then results in a community member's death, a 20-day suspension and moving to like a different unit doesn't really feel or appropriate. But
Understood.
Ron?
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Along with some other people on this call, including Reverend Walden and Director Grant, I attended a couple of less lethal weapons demonstrations out at the academy. At the second, Bolaware was demonstrated. My immediate impression as a layperson was that, given the implementation of some of the discussion we've engaged in today with regard to time and distance, that this potentially is a weapon that could eliminate the basis for deadly use of force, because it appeared to completely immobilize an individual as long as they are wearing clothes. I don't know, because of the hooks and that sort of thing. You indicated, Andrew, in your comments that it's untested. Do either Officer Mullins or yourself know what the status of the testing is, know what the status of SPD's posture is towards the possible purchase and adoption and implementation of that? I see it as being, and again, I'm speaking as a layperson, but I see it as a potentially extremely viable instrumentality in order to preclude these fatalities from happening, protect the officer at the same time, and deal in a less than final manner.
Yeah, I can give a little bit of information, at least from what I'm aware of. Is I took part in some of the testing, so I've used it and it's been used on me, and I agree that it can be effective. I mean, it has limitations too, as you know, Ron, where you need to really have kind of 10 feet around the individual, either kind of in front, behind, and to the side, to allow the wraps to actually go around, or else if there's obstructions, they'll hit the obstructions and they won't go around the individual. It also, you're going to need to be closer than probably you want to be, and it may not work necessarily in cases where someone's mobile, like where someone is running away from you or walking quickly away from you. It may not work. That being said, again, it's just another possible tool to have where even if it slows someone down, it's beneficial and it gives officers time to go in and go hands-on. So my understanding is that SPD is seriously considering a trial, like a kind of a pilot program with these tools. I don't know if Chris Fisher's on here and he might be able to speak to it more, but definitely from OPA's perspective, the folks that I've talked to in training from chief coordinator down, I've really encouraged them to do this because why not? And I think, if even if it only works in some situations, so those are situations where you may not have to use your firearm. So again, I'm hopeful that this is something that hopefully in 2021 that can be rolled out, even if it's only with a couple officers on patrol, and then we go from there. But I would defer to Chris if he's on the call, or Chief Coordinator or the department to speak more fully about that.
I think you can unmute yourself. If not, until then, Mylena, do you want to go next? Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of piggyback off what Douglas was sharing too. Like, it does seem pretty unacceptable that, you know, the loss of a community member does just result in a suspension of 20 days. Like that, especially if the findings are out of policy. And I think this is where a lot of people get frustrated with police accountability, because then people make things that are out of policy or commit harm, even if it is within policy. And then there's no accountability to the community of like, how do I know that this person's not going to harm again, just because they move to another unit or get more training. So I just wanted to, you know, again, elevate and amplify what Douglas shared. And then, you know, I'm not a police officer, and, you know, I think about, I went to the Community Police Academy, the 11 or 12-week program, and they spend a lot of time on use of force and a lot of time on, you know, edged weapons and how to kind of tackle that, so to speak. And, you know, one of the things that didn't come up that I have found interesting in looking at, you know, is like Europe is, you know, I've seen video of officers in different countries surrounding, you know, an individual with a knife or with a sword, with like body shields, and being able to subdue that person without having to use really any force at all. And I think I'm just curious as to why that's never, maybe there's something I'm missing and I don't understand, but why that has never been something to be explored. I don't know if anybody can speak to that, but yeah.
I mean, I had a conversation, Melina, with an officer the other day where they were saying the same types of things. Why not have some sort of a suit that, you know, is more impervious, like either made of links or more impervious to a knife? And maybe it was somewhat facetious, but like, why not try that and then bear hug or tackle the person to the ground? I mean, again, I think things have been done a certain way for a long time, and it stems from the way people are trained from the academy, and it stems from kind of national best practices. But I think you're right in that there's an opportunity to think outside the box and to change up how these issues are approached. And I think one thing the department appears willing to say is that, you know, everything should be on the table, is that every single tactic should be available to be used. So I think I don't think it's an unreasonable or even a impractical question. I mean, I think it's something that I'm happy to ask the department to see if they've considered. With regard to the discipline, is I do understand the concern expressed by both yourself and Douglas about the discipline. You know, ultimately, discipline is a function, a command function, but it's a recommendation that also OPA is involved in and that OPA makes to the chief. Here, I think the reason the discipline was 20 days versus termination was based in part on the finding of a failure to de-escalate versus a failure versus the shooting itself being outside of policy. So a discussion of tactical issues versus the ultimate failure to use appropriate deadly force. So I think that's why it was a 20-day suspension versus a termination. So, and not that that makes it any better or that remedies your concern, but just to give you a perspective as to why the discipline range was what it was, I think that's why.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, it seems like maybe if it would have been de-escalated properly, then the use of force wouldn't have been necessary, even if that shooting was said to be within policy, because that person posed, or the officer perceived that person as posing a threat. So I think it's interesting of like,
are we really looking at what led to that shooting, or like, well, you didn't do this well, but it was still within policy because of a decision, maybe not even of sound mind that someone made. I appreciate you explaining that. That gives me some insight into, kind of how that process works.
Yeah, but I think it's both, Alina. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, I think it's you're dealing with a situation where, and it's different from the Alaskan Way shooting where you had an individual who was harming himself. He had a knife and he was cutting his own body and neck. Here, this situation was someone lunging at people running with a knife. So I think officers, when they responded to it, I think they were more concerned of the threat level in this case than maybe they were in the Alaskan Way case. And I think that informed potentially the approach that they took. And again, it doesn't make it any better or any different, but I think these are cases that are, I think, hyper complicated to assess. But again, your criticisms are merited, and I think it's a systemic issue.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Does anybody have anything else to add?
Mark has one more.
Can I say that I don't think that any amount of discipline is going to be able to bring a person back or make up for the loss of life. And 20 days seems like not a big deal, and I can kind of understand that. But being removed from K-9 for an officer is devastating. And I know personally that officers that have had this happen in the past have basically left the department or left police work because of that kind of devastation. It devastates an officer when you take them out of K-9. So if there's any punishment that could be levied against an officer, that lets him know that he did something, he violated policy. And let me tell you that when that happened, when that discipline was levied, it sent ripples through the department. Officers in patrol had questions and basically just it made officers shiver, because most of the officers didn't really think about whether that was in compliance or not. Now they are. Now they're totally thinking about how they need to get out of their vehicles and address suspects, and they know they have to do it better. So there were some good things that happened out of this discipline, and the officer happens to be an officer that people know. A lot of officers know. So when that happened to him, it sent a message. I just want to let people know. But you could never replace a life with a discipline, even if the officer gets fired. In terms of the shields and being able to have shields and other things to try to protect yourself from knives, all of that's well and good when you have the time. When his officer gets presented with a knife suddenly, everything goes out the window. I'm just saying. And generally when I've encountered knives, it's been suddenly.
I just want to thank you all for having such robust conversation about this. I think it's still saddening and disheartening whenever we lose a community member and someone's life is taken, regardless to time, regardless to anything that has actually been presented here. People are suffering. that is a family member lost, and that is a community member lost. And I know that the CPC has been warning of deficiencies in SPD's de-escalation and use of force policies for some time now. So Andrew, now the team has released the investigation and accompanying policy recommendations. I think it's really important as the commission that we review this case and find solutions to the repeated uses of deadly force. So we are losing far too many people, especially in mental health crisis with knives. And so I'm pretty sure, matter of fact, I know it to be true, our policy team is going to be making some recommendations about how we can move with reviewing closed cases. But we have a lot of work that we have to do, and we would be remiss to think that in any form or fashion that a 20-day suspension or a demotion is anything in comparison to the loss of a life. So I just want to say that and make as smooth of a transition as possible, because this is definitely a heavy topic, and it's definitely one that there are going to be some moments where we will agree to disagree on, but that's the purpose of us being here, so we can have these type of conversations and what we are tasked to do. I want to thank everybody that was a part of this conversation. Start the Community Police Commission updates within our office and amongst the commissioners. We started a little bit behind, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But again, thank you for that conversation. For many of you, you know that we had our co-chairs, Aaron Goodman and LaRon Baker, step down from their positions. A letter was sent around. I want to just make sure that I acknowledge them and I thank them for the time that they committed to the commission in those roles. I sent around details regarding the co-chair election and the situation that we find ourselves in. You know, per our bylaws, if there is a vacancy that comes up during the annual term in a meeting, we can appoint new co-chairs to serve the remainder of the term, which would be from present date through January, which is when our annual elections typically are. We really need to have a replacement to fill that. I sent around information about the recommendation of folks putting forth a slate, a minimum of 2, best practices 3. We have had a slate that has come forward based on that information that was sent around to the full commission. And so I want to give them an opportunity to share themselves as a slate, kind of introduce themselves. And then if there are no one that is opposed to that slate or wants to run against it, then we need to take a vote today so we can get co-chairs in place. Before they introduce themselves and have a conversation, I would like to add a reassurance of, because of that change and because of that unprecedented situation, CPC has found ourselves in many of those type of transitions, and we have always persevered and been resilient, and we will continue to do so in this particular situation. And I want to reassure you that no work will stop. No one is demotivated from doing what needs to be done. And if anything, this gives us an opportunity, with the abundance of new commissioners that we have, an opportunity to choose who the co-chairs will be moving forward for the duration of leadership through January. If no one has any questions or comments, I'd like.
This is Commissioner Zia. Just a quick question. Is the co-chairs resigning from being commissioners or just from their role as co-chairs?
Great question, Joseph. Thank you. I can address that. LaRon has actually, per their letter, they are stepping down to focus on work, so they will no longer be a commissioner or a co-chair. Erin Goodman will continue on throughout the end of her term as a commissioner. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? All right, well, I would like to give Douglas, Catherine, and Reverend Walden an opportunity to speak to you all about their slate. And it's literally just an opportunity just to reintroduce yourselves, guys. For the most part, folks know who you are, but just to set intentions and, you know, introduce yourselves as a slate. And then we can take a vote again if there is no one that puts up one or opposes. And I want to just thank you all too for stepping up to the plate and even offering it. I'm extremely appreciative. And so is the rest of the staff. And I'm hoping your fellow commissioners will also feel the same way. Douglas, Catherine, Reverend Walden, whoever would like to speak first.
I'm happy to speak first. I really appreciate the opportunity to be considered as a co-chair with Reverend Walden and Douglas. I think some of the things that we have talked about being a slate is continuing to all work together and really hold space and prioritize including and engaging the varying commissioners' perspectives and ensuring that community voices are included and uplifted in our ongoing efforts and helping to shepherd that work forward together. So I think that was one of the big things we had talked about is running on the slate together. Douglas or Reverend Walden, what might you like to add?
Reverend Walden, do you want to say something?
Well, you know, what I'm offering is just to shepherd and to be a support for new leadership, so that we've had an opportunity to see what happens when. Well, we would like to be able to show that what happens when people are really working together, and being as a guide to staff or to the executive, but encouraging the work to come forth to the commission so that the work can come forth. So that I mean, this was unprecedented to have been meeting for like almost 9 months and no work comes through to the commissioners. And it's a commissioner led. It's not a nonprofit. It's a commissioner led commission. And so I'm just going to be in the background, just not out front with leadership at all, just as a resource. So the new leadership can get can get their feet wet at this, and knowing that some meetings that they can't get to, I can get to. So it's always three, better with three. If something needs to go out and one person is not available, it can still go out. The work is not stopped in the office. So I'm not trying to run the commission. I'm just trying to help steer it so that so we can move forward. And the two new, if this slate is chosen, the two people, Douglas and Catherine, would be the face of the commission, or as the co-chairs that would be talking to the press and all of that. I'm not taking that kind of role at all. It's just to be here to help create the space, as Catherine said, so people can get the work done and have some unity and some harmony. And as we move forward. So, and I come off in January anyway. I mean, the next year I'm out, and I know that Amy was talking about historical knowledge, and so I'm glad to be able to work with Amy and other people about historical knowledge. And then, what I've done, Carlene will probably be the oldest member of the commission. So that's all. I'm just going to be in the background. I'm not trying to lead. Douglas, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Reverend Walden. The only thing I would add, in addition to what Reverend Walden and Catherine have shared, is I just want to underscore how important it is to harness our collective talents and voices, staff, commissioners, community alike. And I'm grateful to both of Reverend Walden and Catherine for offering their energy and institutional knowledge, community connections towards providing the CPC with some stability in the months ahead. And I'll just say, we have a lot on our plate right now. Like, I don't mean us three, I just mean us as a community and as a commission. Our consent decree oversight, internal strategic planning, contract bargaining, our work group efforts and being a part of this conversation about the future of public safety. And we can do this. We can get all these things done and more. And so I'm excited to join forces with these two folks, and grateful for the opportunity to be considered.
All right, thank you, you all. I don't think there's anything else I can add that I didn't kick off the introduction to, but again, just grateful and appreciative of you all stepping up. So what I'd like to do is call for, last time we did this, I was a commissioner, and I'm trying to recall what the process was, but I believe it's just me putting forth a vote to vote in the new commissioners.
Brandy,
Yeah.
I think that we might have to have a commissioner put
Do
forward
it.
a motion to
Okay.
nominate.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jesse.
And I would be happy to move that Reverend Walden and Douglas Wagoner and the third commissioner, Catherine Sabol, will be the co-chairs as we move forward for the balance of the year.
And this is Suzette. I will second that motion.
Perfect. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any
Hey,
abstentions?
Brandy, this is Teresa from the City Attorney's Office. I just wanted to double check one thing.
Okay.
The bylaws say for the slate of co-chairs, a maximum of 3 each from a different appointing authority. Could we confirm the appointing authorities for each of the 3?
Yes.
Yes. I'm the mayor's office.
I was appointed by City Council.
And I think Catherine is on CPC, is that correct?
No, I was appointed by City Council.
Oh, okay.
Shoot.
Well, I guess at some point you have to amend.
Yeah, for sure. Teresa, then what can we do with that?
It sounds like you need further discussion to determine how to build your slate. If you have 2 commissioners, they should be from different appointing authorities. If you have a maximum of 3, then each should be from a different appointing authority.
Okay.
Sorry, Douglas and Catherine.
Well, at what point can you amend it? What point can you amend your the bylaws, Teresa?
I believe the bylaws amendments requires 2 meetings, one to review and propose changes, and the next to adopt.
Right.
Is there any?
I mean, because at one time we were all appointed by one authority, and then we went to do something else. And so anyway, I'm going to stay out the conversation. I'm going to let other people take the conversation under this. Yeah.
Okay with making it 2 for now and then amend whatever it is that we need amended so that it's 2 appointing authorities as opposed to like having to have all 3, that feels like something that we could fix as a commission. Yeah, because I feel like 2 is actually pretty decent, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joseph. Eilena? I think you're muted, Eilena, if you're talking.
Oh my word, I'm still freaking being on mute and talking. I was just gonna say, I think, personally, I think it is important that, first of all, I'll say I support the slate. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think it is important to have each appointing body have someone represent as co-chairs, because I feel like in the past, there have been power dynamics that, because we are not constantly in communication, have created a lot of confusion. And I think just, at least for me, has felt like a lack of transparency. So while I would be open to, at least in this situation, having this slate exist in some capacity, I do think it's important that each appointing body is able to put forth a person that they would want as a co-chair as a slate. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying, but I think there's just a lot of different dynamics between like folks appointed by the mayor, folks appointed by city council, folks appointed by CPC, and just as a matter of like transparency and ensuring that we are like working together in this kind of way. I wouldn't want to change that amendment forever. I don't know how other folks feel.
Well, you could always put an emergency clause in the bylaws that in the emergency. I mean, because that was a gap in the bylaws. There was no place in the bylaws of what happened if both co-chairs stepped down at the same time. I mean, so that's a gap right there. So that shows that they have to go back and fix that gap. And then in fixing that gap, you can also fix the part of what happens if an emergency happens or if something happens like happens right now, and how you can fix it temporarily, because this is only temporarily. I mean, in January, you don't, so how would you fix it temporarily? So those are the things that probably need to be fixed in the bylaws, that what's happened when two people step down at the same time, and what happens if you have a slate like this and it's for a short period of time. How do you fix that in your bylaws so you can get through to the next election? So you can hold your next election in January. So those would be the things to be considered.
And another thing, this is Commissioner Sia. The other thing that comes up for me is, we're not playing a game of politics with the chairs, right? I think we've agreed that the commission works collaboratively together, right? And so to me, it's really like who's facilitating a meeting, and less about, positionality as far as the chair. So that's why I would, actually argue against you, Alina, to say that, that fix wouldn't really take away what I think your concern is. How do we work together as a commission? That's the concern, not who is a chair from which body, because I think at the end of the day, we're making decisions together. I think, and that's I think my sentiments from the last few meetings is there wasn't necessarily a shared sense of making decisions together.
And I hear that, Joseph. I have so much respect for you. And I agree, we should not be playing politics. And I think my experience as a commissioner in the past is that we have. And I think that's where kind of my concern comes from. And, just because something has happened in the past doesn't mean we can't be better moving forward. So I'm also open to, this idea again of this new slate. And maybe we need to rethink about like how transparent we are with the conversations that co-chairs are in with the rest of the commission. I know everybody has a full-time job and we're all volunteers. And I think sometimes that information comes to us later and creates some confusion, some frustration, like a feeling of lack of transparency and not really being honest with each other, even though that's not the intention. So I think me just, putting that forth is to try to make it a more transparent process, and honestly, just to be like real about, the experience that I feel like I've had as a commissioner in the past. But I respect you so much, Joseph, and I appreciate you sharing that.
I love you too.
This is Suzette. I would say, that I would agree that to move forward with this current slate as it has been stated, and figure out, what we need to do in the meantime to rectify whatever the bylaws are saying. This is a slate. When we had 3 in the past, it was helpful, because if there is a person that is out, then there's still 2 co-chairs that can still go. I too am about more transparency and making sure that the work continues to flow. It helps when, it helps if there's 3 to share the workload and the burden of being the co-chair, because we all have other work that we do. So I'm in favor for having the 3 move forward in the interim. And, it's for a short duration. So I really don't want to quibble over all of this. I would rather just move forward with it and just figure out how to take care of the issue at hand.
Thank you, Suzette. Prachi?
Yeah, thanks. So one, agree with Alina, I very much in support of this particular slate. I also think that we can't kind of ignore the reason why we had the three different, the idea that the three different cultures would come from three different bodies. That is kind of a result of experiences that the CPC has had in the past. I also do wonder or am concerned about the way in which bylaws are approached, right? And so I think bylaws have to be kind of an enduring government, like a governmental kind of document, and they should be changed over time. And maybe what we're doing here is recognizing that there is a gap, like Reverend Walden mentioned, and that needs to be addressed. But I think that a concern that not a concern, right, but I think one of the things that I wanted to put on the table is that there is a reason why, and I know Reverend Walden, you were around at the time when we were having that discussion. There's a reason why, we talked about where there are three different, co-chairs. They would all come from different bodies, as well as if there were two co-chairs, they would come from different bodies. So just want to kind of, remind people that those were conversations that we had. And I think changing bylaws on a little bit of a whim is probably not the best idea for us in terms of like making sure we have that kind of document that really governs us. I would be really interested in hearing what next steps could look like in order to kind of fill that gap from Teresa, like what can we do in order to do that, rather than just kind of barreling through right now. As Brandy mentioned, we do have an excellent staff who can kind of carry a lot of the work right now. And so, we're in a good place where the work can actually move forward at this point in time. And so maybe that kind of urgency isn't necessary. But, also, yeah, absolutely. I see where, Joseph, you're coming from. I see where you're coming from, Suzette. Just kind of want to see if we can workshop a solution here.
Well, I like to say that I said that I would be a helper, and so as a helper for the new co-chairs, and so if it goes this way, then I would be in the mayor's office, and then the city council, I would be two co-chairs, and then so the work it would be still more of a struggle for me to be a co-chair without the other two people. And I'll just say that my willingness to do this was to help shepherd us to next year so that the new co-chairs could get the experience at being the co-chairs. And so if they wanted to go forward next year, then they could. I come off. And so so that was one of the reasons for my yes to do this. And I guess that that piece with just the two of us, then that kind of like puts more struggle on me to see if I can do this with just another person. So so those are the reasons why I said yes, and I to be able to do this. And I mean, they change the rules in Congress all the time. I mean, so let's be real. I mean, and so it's just not that difficult. I mean, and I understand Alina because I was here through all of this stuff. So we have to decide what we're gonna do to go forward. I mean, there's September, October, November, December, and you vote again in January, and so we have to decide that what we're gonna do to go forward then. And maybe Teresa can add something to that, or and then it's a short term. I mean, we're not talking about a whole year. I mean, this is just a short term. And then fix the gap. I mean, this is a gap that we didn't see coming. I mean, when we were doing the bylaws, we did not. I mean, it was not in our head, and that's why it's a work in progress. So that's what it is. So anyway, I'm gonna stand down. I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Reverend Walden.
Yeah,
Teresa?
I would. Oh,
Oh, sorry, Joseph.
oh, Teresa. No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I'd be willing to put this through a vote. I feel, I don't really agree with the sentiments that we're barreling through. I actually think that, we as commissioners can make, sound decisions and then also be able to iterate later. And my thought around still moving forward is that, we are not worshiping chair positions. Again, like this is in my time with the commission has always been, it's a full commission that makes decisions together, and so to me, like, I feel like I'm aligning myself more to the spirit of this commission as long as I've served here. So it's not a matter of barreling through. And also, when they wrote that constitution, that was for white people. So I'm not about worshiping no letter of the law either. So I'm ready to iterate however we can to make it work for folks.
Thank you, Joseph. Teresa?
Good morning, commissioners. So if you want to proceed with the current proposed slate, I do not recommend pushing it through in violation of your bylaws. That's not a good practice to publicly deviate from the internal governance provisions that you all have agreed to. But that doesn't mean that we're stuck. So looking at the procedures in our bylaws for bylaws amendments, we have a two-step process. The first is proposing amendments introduced at a commission meeting. The second is a resolution passed by 2/3 of the commissioners to amend the bylaws. So if we want to move forward and in compliance with the bylaws and in support of the current slate, what you can do is amend today's agenda to include introducing amendments to the bylaws to clarify that in the bylaws, Article 4, subsection A, 2A, which requires that each of the co-chairs are from a different appointing authority, the proposed amendments could say that there's an exception when you are appointing a slate to complete a vacancy, because that recognizes the need, in an urgent situation to get co-chairs in place. If that works for you, then that means the current slate can still be held as a nominated slate, but the bylaw amendment would also be proposed today. And then in 2 weeks, when you have your next meeting, you would adopt that resolution to create the exception for when you're appointing co-chairs to complete the balance of a term. And then after that, you can appoint this current slate. So if you're willing to wait the 2 weeks, we can do this all in a way that does not violate your current bylaws. Jesse, did you have a suggestion to add, or was it a separate?
No, it's actually along the lines of what you were saying. If we do want to amend the bylaws, I think one thing that might help alleviate, at least partially, not fully, concerns about different representation in the co-chairs is perhaps we don't just remove the requirements that they're from different appointing bodies entirely. We can say in the event that co-chairs are required to be appointed in the middle of a term, they must be from at least 2 different appointing authorities, so that we don't get one where co-chairs leave and then we have 3 people from the mayor's office. That doesn't get all the concerns, but it at least leaves a small protection in.
I agree. How does that 2-step process sound to the commission?
I'm agreeing.
Sounds good to me.
So there's an amendment on the floor that has to be taken off.
Well, there are a couple of things. First, you have to make a motion to amend your agenda to include a bylaws amendment. And then after that after that is approved, the second part is for a commissioner to make a motion to amend the bylaws. And that section again of the bylaws is Article 4A2A to include an exception for the co-chairs nominees when you're filling the balance of a term. And you can incorporate what Jesse recommended, which is that the the slate filling the balance of the term come from at least 2 appointing authorities, or not mention at all. I'll leave that up to you.
I don't think we should mention the appointing authorities. Yeah.
So I'll remove my motion.
Why did you remove my motion?
Because my motion was to accept the current slate of officers.
Oh, I got you. Okay, thank you. I mean,
Or the recommended slate. And so since
Okay.
we're not moving forward with that right now.
Right, I got you.
You can't have two motions on the floor at once.
Yeah, that's right. You can't have two motions on the floor at once. Okay, that's right.
I'll motion for the amendment to the bylaw.
Well, I think we first have to do the amendment for the agenda. That has to go first. So I will motion to amend the agenda to include the amendments for the bylaws.
I'll second it. Hunter.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. And then the second motion. Teresa, what's the wording for the second motion that needs to happen?
Well, the portion of the bylaws that would be amended is Article 4, subsection A to A,
Okay.
or, let's say Article 4, section A2. And then based on whatever the commission today makes a motion in terms of the amendment, I would take that direction and prepare the resolution for the next meeting.
Okay.
Could you repeat what your recommendation was, though, Teresa? You did have a recommendation for that.
Well, there were two forms that you could take. So the proposed amendment would be to Article 4, section A, Article 4, section A2, and that's regarding co-chairs in terms of the slate, the term, and filling a vacancy. So it's up to the commission today to determine what amendment you want to that in the context of filling the balance of a term. When you're appointing co-chairs to fill the balance of a term, do you want to create the exception to say that they can come from any appointing authority, or do you still want what Jesse provided as a distinction of requiring that even a slate to fill the balance of a vacant term should include commissioners that are from at least 2 different appointing authorities? So option A, you don't care which appointing authority the slate comes from when they are filling the balance of the term. Option B is to distinguish that they should come from at least 2 appointing authorities.
I like option A myself, but I will not stand down. Joseph, could somebody make a motion? Joseph or either Suzette?
This is Suzette. I'll make the motion to for there to be a resolution to amend section 2A so that we can do interim co-chairs, and option A with it not having to be with appointing authorities, different appointing authorities.
And I'll second that. This is Joseph. Can we just say ditto, Teresa, Jen, and Jesse? Okay.
I think Suzette stated it clearly. Thank you.
Okay, Joseph, you seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone say something? Okay. Approved.
So that means you get to chair the whole meeting. That means you chair the whole meeting. You're doing a good job.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. Okay, so moving on, you all, let's, we're gonna get a strategic plan update from Connected Realities. Joy and Leilani, I believe, are both with us.
Yes, we are, and we have a little bit of a slide presentation. We can do this really briefly. I'm going to share my screen, which I believe I have the permission to do right now. And how about that? Did that work? Are you able to see us? Okay, I see heads nodding. All right, well, so we just wanted to tell you a little bit about where we are in the strategic planning process, what's going on now, what is going to happen next, and how all of you are going to be involved. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Joy Lujan. I'm the founder of Connected Realities, LLC. We are the strategic planning consultant, or the consultant who has been hired to lead you all through a strategic planning process. And so we have mapped out a few different basic big steps of the strategic planning process. So here you see 3 big sections and 7 steps outlined, which leads to you all having a draft strategic plan that maps out goals, priorities, and actions for 2022, 23, and 24 by the end of this year. And so this first big section here in yellow is a situation analysis and strategic assessment, which is what we're doing right now and what Leilani will tell you about in a few moments. Once we're done with that, our plan is to report back to the ad hoc strategic planning working group, to whom we will report findings from this assessment that we're doing, and they will help us identify key issues and then help us to map out the approach for the purple section here, which we envision involving the full commission. So Leilani, would you please tell us a little bit more about this first section? And I will be running the slide deck, so you please tell me when you want me to proceed.
Thank you, Joy, and good morning, everyone. I'm Leilani, also with Connected Realities. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for welcoming us today. So we begin the strategic planning process of understanding the context in which we're working by identifying and querying stakeholders to understand their needs, their concerns, and their desires and their hopes. We like to call this an inquiry-based situation analysis, asking lots of questions. And on the next slide, in the situation analysis and strategic assessment, our first step of deep learning, we've been gathering input from a diversity of stakeholders of the Seattle Community Police Commission, both internal, I think a number of you are familiar with this input gathering process, as well as external. So this includes, right, the commission itself, you all, staff, community members and leaders, community-based organizations, as well as government. And on the next slide, we are in the process of mapping out our findings in a SWOT, SWOT, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats like format that helps us assess and discern what we've heard in terms of the positives, the negatives, and internal and external factors. And so there's also a level of urgency and importance that we're hearing from stakeholders, which helps us to focus in on key issues on the next slide. And so these are the key issues that we'll be working with you all, the Community Police Commission, to address in the strategic planning process. On the next slide, just get into our next steps. So understanding key issues from your external stakeholders, your community, among yourselves. This is exciting stuff because, you know, this is where strategy is built upon. So I hope you're getting really interested because we need your participation in the coming months. So our next steps begin with working with the strategic planning working group, as Joy was saying, We'll be presenting the results of this situation analysis and situation assessment to this working group. And we'll be working with them to translate the findings into agendas for the workshops that the full commission will attend. So we hope to schedule the meeting with the working group for the week of September 27th, but we'll work offline to try to schedule that. That's what we're aiming for. And with that, I will hand it back over to Joy.
Okay, thank you, Lenny. So when we first presented our process to you a few months ago, it was June or July, we shared some of our values, and this particular value related to collaboration and consensus building. I sort of heard some of that echoed in the discussion that you were having previously in terms of how the commission is envisioned to be excuse me, working together to get things done. And so the way that we're going to do the next steps in the process is about bringing, the way that it was designed, the way that we hope it will happen, is to bring all of your voices together, all of your perspectives, all of your skills and experience, and all of the things that you bring that nobody else does. You know, your unique perspectives as commissioners to these conversations about what is envisioned to be 3 strategic planning workshops. And so these steps are a series of 3 workshops. The first begins with the issues that Alani and Gigi and I identify and that we will have refined with the strategic planning working group. And we'll examine those issues really closely with all of you in more depth to understand what are the root causes here, what are the core issues, what are the underlying needs related to whatever issues we're working with. And then in a second workshop, which is step 5 on this process now, we begin to outline the goals for the next 3 years and those tasks that will help us to achieve the goals. And the third workshop, which is the 6th step in this illustrated process, is to get into implementation planning, action planning. So that will include prioritizing the goals, really get a sense of timing of when things happen, what needs to happen in the first 3 months of the strategic plan, what happens in year 1, year 2, year 3, who needs to be involved, what kinds of resources are needed. Let's get real about capacity in terms of staff and funding and time that it's going to take to do things. So we just really get a solid action plan and an implementation plan by the end of this process. So in our original proposal, these 3 steps are the equivalent of a 2.5-day strategic planning retreat with the full commission. And we had designed this to happen over a series of weeks so that we didn't have to get 2.5 full days of your time all at once. We're going to work with the strategic planning ad hoc committee to really help us understand what format, what sequence, what amount of time works best for the CPC. So we'll figure all of that out, but we are really committed to making sure that all of your voices help us to create this plan. Connected Realities is not writing your plan. Connected Realities is facilitating a process of collecting and harnessing the wisdom that each of you bring to put into a plan that will guide you for the next few years. So that's our strategic planning update. Thank you for the time to be able to share that with you. And I'm really looking forward to being able to work more deeply with all of you in this process as we move forward. And we will entertain questions if there are any for a few minutes.
If there are questions, oh, Reverend Walden.
I just have a comment. I'm just so happy to work with you all, and then the conversations that I've had with the staff, with your staff, was courteous and kind and engaging and very welcoming. So I just happy that you all are working with us and be able to lay out, help us, the new commissioners, because I'll be off, but help people help the commission going forward. I'm just so excited about this possibility of us getting to that place. So thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. It is our honor and our pleasure.
Well, if you, I think Mark has a question or has a comment.
Yes. I don't mean to be a downer and together. Can I suggest one thing, and that you help me with Rainier and Henderson and the shootings that are going on all over the city? Can anybody help me address that and try to get some kind of assistance in trying to solve this situation? I appreciate you guys coming in and trying to help us, but that's one of the suggestions that Officer Mullins will put in, is that I need some assistance. I want some help. And I'm not going to be able to do it by myself, and the police department is not going to be able to do it by itself. We need the community. And the way I understand it, the Community Police Commission is supposed to bring police and community together. We need that to happen sooner than later. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I hear that as an immediate strategic planning need, as an immediate core issue.
Thank you, Officer Mullins. If no one has anything else to add right now, please feel free to be able to reach out to Connected Realities or connect with me, you all. I want to thank Joy and Leilani again for joining us today. And there will be some more information that will come out to you all in relation to that ad hoc strategic planning committee meeting. And we'll get that information disseminated out to everybody. Thank you both for being able to join us today and provide those updates. Thank you.
Yeah.
We didn't make note of it, but I wanted to know if there is anyone that has any new CPC business they wanted to add to the meeting before we get into work group updates. Okay. All right. Well, I will pass it over to the behavioral health team.
Hi. So with the behavioral health work group, we have been working on formalizing and kind of finalizing our draft of our work plan and scope for the work group. We were going to present on it today, but since Dr. Pinto is not here, we're going to wait until the next meeting to bring the full work plan to you all for discussion.
Thank you, Catherine. Police practices?
Thank you. In the meeting packet, you received the draft letter that's addressed to Dr. Ofteli, the monitor, regarding the changes SPD made to their use of force and crowd management policies. The police practices work group is not requesting any action today from the commission. We need to edit this letter before we bring it back to you for a vote. So this is a work in process. Earlier in 2021, the CPC made 15 recommendations to the use of force and crowd management policy, and 2 were implemented, 2 were partially implemented, and 11 were declined. And we received a letter from Chief Diaz explaining why the 11 recommendations that we made were not implemented. And the police practices work group decided to give our feedback on why we thought some of the rejected recommendations deserve a second consideration. And so that's the purpose of this letter. The work group started drafting this letter, I believe it was toward the end of June. But because of the delay, some of our recommendations are no longer relevant. And this letter will need to be reworked at our next police practices work group meeting, which is on September 14th. And you all are invited to this meeting, certainly to give your input. And then after that work group meeting, this letter will be presented again to the commission for a vote. There is some language in here, if you read any of it, that needs approval, certainly from the full commission. For example, the opening language that the CPC can review policy after policy But if officers are not being held accountable for violating those policies and being held accountable in meaningful ways, then we're just wasting our time. We will also edit the letter regarding the City Council Bill 120-105, since that has already been approved. And we will edit recommendation number 12, which is regarding officers investigating actions of other officers. At this point, we do not feel it's appropriate for this letter, since there may be some collective bargaining implications to this recommendation. So, in short, we will be back with this letter and will request your approval before sending it, but this is what we are working on. And that's the end of my update.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter. Does anyone have any questions? All right, we appreciate you all's work on the letter, and I'm sure the commission looks forward to being able to have an opportunity to review it and go through it and have a discussion. Felicia, would you like to do a community engagement update?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So there's been a lot going on with community engagement. I'm glad to start getting the work out. Last night we had a youth focus group. I thought maybe Leilani and Joy would mention it. So, and that was quite interesting. It's funny engaging with youth on the computer. They turn the cameras off. They're walking up, the camera up in the sky, but they were really engaging. So that was promising. And then tomorrow we will have the youth focus group with adults who work with the youth. So I'm still looking for 2 more people. I'm pretty, once no one else steps up, I'll find another 2. Yeah. So if you know anybody that work with kids, I even thought about Shakandi, but wasn't sure if he was available for that. But yes. So that's for tomorrow.
I have folks that work with youth. So
great. Yes.
I'm happy to give you some names.
I appreciate you. So I just need about 2 more. I have Craig Jackson and Cindy, who works for Seattle Parks and Rec. So that would be awesome. Thanks for that.
Yep, not a problem.
And then still working on, putting together and executing a plan for the community engagement plan. Reverend Walden and I had a great meeting to sit down and kind of map out a direction and the way we want to go. And Mark, I meant to ask you, were you planning to work on the work group? But you don't have to answer that now, but I don't want to forget that was going to be something that I was going to ask you about. So the work group meetings will be, the open meetings will be on the second Tuesday at 6 o'clock, and then the 4th Tuesday will be our work planning meetings. It kind of felt that way just based on how everything went last week. So we got a lot of things on the plate to work on. A lot of things, very exciting work. If any of you guys have any questions or any suggestions, or want to be on the schedule to present whatever it is you're working on, I want everybody to know this work group right here, which is a little different than the rest. This is to bring us all together and so that we can get all of your messages and all of the hard work that everybody's working on out to the community. That's what it was designed for, and that's what it's going to be. We're going to have events coming up, and if you have an event you might be thinking of, then let's talk about it. I'll see what I can do to help. But I'm excited. I'm excited about the work. I'm excited about having Mother Walden working with me on this, and Erica, and I think Erica's still gonna work on it. But we do need 2 co-chairs. That was the other thing. Brandy, I was gonna talk to you about that later, about procedure-wise, how that goes, because we still don't have co-chairs. And then again, maybe we talk about it. We know, maybe we just let the community coming in as needed, like whatever work group. But yeah, maybe that's something we could talk about later. Any questions for me? Well, thank you.
Just to thank you, Felicia. We appreciate you. Gonna have Nia up next from the policy team, our senior policy analyst, to go over the state legislative agenda worksheet that was a part of you all supplemental materials.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and give you a little bit of background on what this document is and how it was created. So OIR reached out to us and they asked for our legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session. At the end of July, I met with Brandy and LaRon to kind of discuss how we would figure out and move forward with completing this document. In that meeting, we decided a couple of things. One, we would complete this document, but it would not stop us from doing our own document, much like we did last year. That was a full letter, fully explaining what our legislative priorities are. And the second thing we determined were 3 types of items to include in this document. So the 3 types are any issues that we presented in our 2021 legislative priority document that the city did not take up in their final legislative priorities document. So an example of that would be the complete ban on tear gas in Washington State. We also included legislation that we supported by commission vote, but changed in some way during the process that made it align a little bit less with what we were thinking. An example of this is the police tactics bill that went through and passed. One of the parts that we were particularly interested in was it was looking to completely ban the use of canines as like a force option. And through the legislative process, that ban turned into the Criminal Justice Training Commission creating a model policy on it instead of an outright ban. The third class of issues we decided to look at were pieces of legislation that we supported but did not make it out of committee. So that would be like Senate Bill 5134, which was the collective bargaining legislation, and the traffic stop bill that was introduced late in the session. So in this document, we have listed 5 issue areas and priorities that we would be looking at and submitting to OIR for inclusion in the city's legislative priorities document. But we will still, as I stated earlier, be reinvigorating the state legislative agenda work group to create our own legislative priorities for the upcoming legislative session. So the 5 issues that we included in this document is, again, asking for a full ban on tear gas in Washington State. The second was to remove arbitration as a route of appeal for police misconduct. We also put in to remove accountability for collective bargaining from the collective bargaining process. The fourth is to prohibit traffic stops for certain violations. This is that bill that was introduced late in the session, at the end of this last session. And the final one was to prohibit the use of police dogs outside of search and rescue capacity. All of these were based on different stances that the commission took over the past year. So what we're looking to accomplish here is, one, to ensure that the commission agrees that these are the 5 priorities we will send up to the city through OIR, and 2, to rank these issues in priority level relative to other requests. So since we have these 5 issues, we're looking to rank them 1 through 5. But the first step would be to agree that these are the 5 issues we will move forward with in this capacity. Should I facilitate? Anyone have any questions or comments about any of these specific issues? And I can't see everyone. Give me 1 second.
And can you just give us a brief, like issue 1 is, issue
Right.
2 is, and then we can go through and we can just ask folks, are they in agreement with our city recommended priorities?
Sounds good. So issue 1 is we're looking again for a ban on tear gas in Washington State. It's a statewide ban.
Are folks comfortable with us moving forward? Again, we'll have our own independent legislative agenda. However, these are just the ones that are city supported, so city provided through OIR. So for issue 1, is anyone opposed to us moving forward with banning tear gas in Washington State for issue 1 for this particular worksheet?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
I'm pretty conflicted, but I'm gonna have to oppose the whole ban, statewide ban, because there are gonna be times where that may be necessary.
Okay, let me do it this way. Suzette, thank you for that feedback from you and Officer Mullins. For issue 1, who is in agreement? I think I'm saying a word right. Sorry, y'all. I'm starting to wind down a little bit. I apologize. Who is in agreement with issue 1 or would like to move forward with issue 1? Who is opposed to issue 1?
Who is opposed?
Yeah, to issue 1, the banning.
Who is opposed?
Yeah, who's opposed to us not moving forward with?
Yes, I'm opposed.
I'm opposed as well.
I'm opposed.
Any abstention?
Did you want to do a voice vote, a voice call on it then?
Yeah.
Just see if people are, then it would be, people can just say.
Go through it. Yep.
They would be able to move it faster.
Thank you, Reverend Walden. That is super helpful. Prachi? I can't see if they're here. So, Suzette?
She was opposed.
No.
Colleen? Austin is not here. Aaron is not here. Reverend Hunter?
Yes.
Tasha Johnson?
Abstain.
Esther is not in attendance. Asha's not here. Officer Mullins?
I'm opposed.
Erica Newman? Eilena? Eilena, you're on mute.
In favor.
Joseph?
In favor.
Catherine?
In favor.
Douglas?
Yes.
Reverend Walden?
Yes.
We have 5 yes, 1 abstention, and 2 noes.
Yeah, yeah. It moves forward.
Okay. Issue 2.
So the second one is to remove arbitration as a route of appeal for misconduct. This was also included in our legislative priorities last year.
Was this taken up at all last year at the legislative session?
Not removing arbitration as a route of appeal, but there was legislation out there that did pass to put some guardrails on the arbitration process.
Okay.
By creating like a list of arbitrators that could be used.
Right, okay, okay. I'm in favor of that one.
Okay. You all, it looks like we've actually lost quorum.
I mean, because this had, we needed to, I mean, didn't, doesn't these recommendations need to go out to the city this month or something like that early?
Yes, we were supposed to submit them today.
Yes. All right. Without a quorum, we can't vote on the remaining issues.
Can you tell us who we're missing so that if some of us have people's contact information, we can text them or give them a call? Say, hey, can you show up to vote real quick?
Yep, Colleen is hopped off. So Colleen, Esther, Prachi.
Esther wasn't here, so
yeah, true. But yeah, Prachi and Colleen that were here. We would just need one more vote.
I think we're at quorum right now, just at quorum.
Okay. All right. So issue 2. Let's take a vote for those. I'm going to go roll call. Prachi for issue 2. Suzette?
Can you restate what that issue is? Is that the arbitration one?
Yes, remove arbitration as a route of appeal for police misconduct.
I have to say no.
No. Colleen? Reverend Hunter?
Yes.
Tasha?
No.
Erica Newman? Alina?
Yes.
Joseph? Joseph, if you're there, you're on mute.
Sorry, Brandy. Yes, I'm here.
Are you voting yes or no? For issue 2?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Catherine?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Reverend Walden?
Yes.
Six yeses and 2 noes.
Okay, yeah, all right.
That means that we lost quorum sometime during that vote.
You didn't ask for my vote.
Oh.
Officer Mullins, my apologies. Officer Mullins?
No. And can I say that, are we gonna get a chance to comment on the reasons why we're saying yes or no? Because I feel like I'm putting myself out as a homer. Everything that I'm voting for or against doesn't have any meaning if I don't say why I'm doing it. So do I get an opportunity to tell why later, maybe?
Yes, absolutely, not Reverend, absolutely, Officer Mullins. Okay. Issue 3, removing accountability from collective bargaining. Prachi, Suzette,
Did you say removing accountability from collective bargaining?
yes, Nia, are you still on the call too? So you can.
Yes, I'm still here.
Sorry.
Uh-oh.
So this is,
Amanda just lost me. Hello?
we can hear you, Suzette. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
So this, oh, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So this was Senate Bill 5134. This is one of the pieces of legislation that the CPC voted to support in the last legislative session. So this looks to remove from collective bargaining any barriers to accountability moving forward, like on a statewide level.
Okay, yes.
Reverend Hunter,
Yes, I'm in favor.
Tasha,
Sorry about that. Yes.
Officer Mullins, team, if my team could help me out, because I can't see. Is Officer Mullins, are you still on the call?
No, opposed.
There's some interference. I couldn't hear you, Reverend.
Can you hear me?
I couldn't hear you, Officer Mullins.
I'm opposed. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Erica? Eilena?
Yes, in favor.
Joseph?
In favor.
Catherine?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Reverend Walden?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Those in favor, yeah. So we'll be moving forward with that issue. Nia, do the next one.
Of course. The next issue is to prohibit traffic stops for certain traffic violations. This was a piece of legislation that was introduced late in the 2021 legislative session, and it's aimed at stopping officers from completing stops for minor traffic violations, as they've been shown to be dangerous for both the person being stopped and the officer.
Okay, thank you, Nia.
What's minor? What's minor? Not putting it on your signature. I mean, a signal. What's
right? Small things like not signaling, expired tags, even broken tail light, like small things that are often used, kind of used for as pretext for other things. If that makes sense.
Suzette? Is Suzette not on now?
My internet keeps going in and out.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I have a, so how does one deal with those situations then, if people are not able to cite tickets?
See what you're saying.
I mean, I think that there needs to be some thoughtful conversation in regards to these priorities, because when we're talking about issues like these, we should have had conversation about this prior to us voting on it. I'm not comfortable with this moving forward, because you have to have a means to address it. And if there is no means to address it, we are doing a disservice. So I'm going to have to say no.
Thank you for that, Suzette. You know, what you just shared is definitely valid for sure. Do commissioners want to not propose these issued items so we can have a more robust conversation? Because obviously we can do our own independent agenda of legislative priorities. We don't necessarily have to do this. And I want to honor what Suzette is saying by being able to have an actual conversation.
This is Alina. I respect Suzette's opinion, and also, you know, people look. I don't know if my tail light's not working unless someone tells me. I don't think that should result in a ticket. Cabs are expensive. Maybe we need to be having conversations about root causes of like why people don't do those things. I also don't think you should get a ticket for not turning your signal. You know, I understand like safety concerns, but I think what we've seen is that traffic stops escalate really quickly, and it does put the officer at risk. I think I've heard Officer Mullins talk about a lot, like the danger that, at least that is taught in the academy about pulling folks over. I'm really trying to think about how we address root causes of things, rather than just giving, you know, cops more authority to pull people over for minor things. Like if we've seen anything this past year, like that usually doesn't end well, especially for like Black and brown people. So I don't personally need to have a conversation about that before I vote on this, but I think it's worthy having a conversation around like, yeah, how can we address those types of things if needed?
Thank you, Alina. Douglas?
Mia, with this bill, is there anything in there about civilianizing traffic enforcement? Because I know that's been a discussion, but I wonder if this bill, like it would be removed from law enforcement, but then there would be a different type of traffic enforcement that's, you know, civilian based.
So with the current version of this bill, and I'll remind you all again, it was kind of introduced at the end of the session. It ended up only being about a page and a half. So I don't think they had fully fleshed out what they intended to happen with like those kind of minor things. So it's something that I think they'll probably address moving forward in the next session. I think the point of this bill, as it came out, was to kind of get people thinking about the idea of moving forward with these types of, with removing these types of stops.
Louisa?
I just wanted to quickly add some just context for the conversation in case it's helpful, that we're not voting on recommendations directly to the department right now, so we don't need to have them as flushed out. We're voting on what we would like to recommend the city put in their legislative agenda for them to advocate to the legislature, who will develop entire bills around this and have lots of conversations. And, you know, there's still a whole session around it. So I don't think we need to have we don't have to figure out every detail at this point. There's still a long way. It's just more about our vision and places where we think the city should be advocating.
Also, if it's helpful for this specific one, I believe that the OIG recommended something similar back in May about stopping traffic stops for civil and non-dangerous violations. And Amy Sai's on the line if you would like to use her as a resource.
Hello, just a quick comment if you wanted it, that yes, the OIG did issue one and it's on our website if you'd like to see it.
Hello. Hello, yes. Would you all like to resume the vote, or how would you like to proceed?
Can we start over with the vote?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
So for issue 4. I'm
So
gonna
issue 4, oh, sorry. I was gonna say issue 4 again.
Nia, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
No, I was just going to kind of repeat it from the top, but I think we're still all on the same page.
Okay, thank you. I'm just gonna go down the roll call. Is there?
Yes.
Reverend Hunter?
Yes.
Tasha? Officer Mullins?
No.
Eilina?
Yes.
Joseph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Reverend Walden?
Yes.
The yeses have it. Can we go to issue 5?
Yes. Issue 5 is to prohibit the use of police dogs outside of a search and rescue capacity. So essentially removing them as a use of force option.
Was that on the table? Was that there last year? Wasn't that also presented last year?
It was presented last year in House Bill 1054, which was known as the Tactics Bill. But by the end of the legislative session, it had moved to, instead of just putting an outright ban on their use of canines as a use of force option, it was translated into the Criminal Justice Training Commission, putting together a work group to develop a model policy on the issue.
Okay. Yeah, because they're necessary for search and rescue for sure.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have search and rescue.
Okay, I'm gonna go down the roll call again. Suzette?
Yes.
Reverend Hunter?
Yes.
Tasha? Officer Mullins?
No, and once again, we're talking about items that we don't have any information about to be making a vote, yes or no. That's what I was trying to say before. It's not just a no answer for me. It's more than that. But I understand we are pressed for time and we need to go on.
Eilina?
I'm gonna abstain from this one.
Okay. Joseph?
It's a loud yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Douglas?
Yes.
Reverend Walden?
Yes.
The yeses have it. All right, thank you, everybody.
Could Nia just explain to us again that none of this might not even make it through? I mean, this is just recommendation. Nia, could you explain this process?
Sure. So just like last year, we'll submit these items to the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, and they are charged with putting together the citywide legislative agenda. Even last year, not everything that we put forth was included in the citywide agenda. However, it doesn't stop us from pushing for these different items. It doesn't stop us from pushing for things that fall outside of this as well. And this will not be the last conversation we have about what our legislative priorities will be as a commission. So I hope that, you know, through this process and as this process moves forward, we can continue to gather like robust feedback and have robust discussions about these topics and others.
It's not guaranteed it's going to get in there anyway. I mean, so if it's citywide, our recommendations might not. In the past, they didn't all make it anyway. I mean, right, okay.
Are you able to mark my vote as a yes? I just wanted to double check something really quickly. Is it possible? This is Alina.
Don't I have to go back through the call again?
No.
I don't. Okay, then Eileen, yes, then I can mark that.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Also, as a part of this, the document asked us to rank these 5 issue areas that we are putting forth to OIR. So I'm going to pull up a different document that's kind of more condensed so that we can possibly go through this given our time crunch. Give me 1 second. So we have here our 5 issue areas, and we essentially need to go through and say which is the most important and where the rest fall in rank.
Nia, just in the interest of time, could you give like a recommendation?
Sure. I think I will put recommendations here in a different color. I think I'll do purple, and then we can discuss. For this one, I think I'll put this as 1. This one is 2. Sorry. This is 2. Actually, I think this is 2. This is 3. So here I've put a suggested ranking. So the ban on tear gas being number 1, accountability being number 2. Actually, I think I'll switch those. Accountability from removing accountability from collective bargaining as number 1, ban on tear gas is number 2, use of police dogs outside of search and rescue as 3, removing arbitration as 4, and prohibiting traffic stops or certain violations as 5 are just my suggestions.
Hey, Nia and team, I support your suggestion, Nia, but I gotta go, everybody. See everybody later.
Okay. I support these this ordering as well.
Me too.
This is Alina. I agree also.
Me too.
Suzette?
I'm going to abstain.
You're abstaining? Okay. Officer Mullins?
Abstain.
Tasha? Catherine?
I support this.
And Douglas and Reverend Walden, I heard yours.
All right. Thank you all so much. That concludes our SLA look for today. Thank you.
You're welcome. We probably need to make a recommendation to see if we can extend the meeting at least for 15 minutes because for what else is on the agenda.
Yes, Reverend Walden, can you put that on the floor?
Are we gonna have quorum though?
Well, we're not going to be voting. I mean, it's nothing we're going to vote on for the next. It's the annual report that's important for us to go over. I mean, to at least begin to work on it. She's been working on it for 8 months, so so we can extend it, you know, for just 10-15 minutes, so that Shailene could go through it, highlight it, and the things that you know, 8 months is a long time. So.
Hi, this is Teresa. If you're no longer at a quorum, then technically this is no longer an OPMA meeting. If you'd like to, you can continue the recording and the minutes can continue to reflect the discussion going forward, but the meeting is technically over as soon as quorum is lost. So if someone is keeping the minutes for this, please note that quorum has been lost and the discussion from here forward is not by the full commission.
But also, we weren't going to vote on anything either, Teresa, and presentations
right, but
are live.
Discussion and deliberation is still considered
still
city
allowed.
business.
It's still allowed. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Discussion and deliberation is still considered city business, even though there isn't a vote taken.
Perfect. So essentially, we're just functioning as a committee meeting at this point, correct?
Right. Thank you.
Okay,
Hi, everyone. Sorry, this is Shailene. The OPA materials actually did require a vote. So that we probably won't have to discuss. The annual report didn't necessarily need a technical vote. It just needed a decision on how you all wanted to move forward in the work, which I can discuss, but the OPA thing, that did need a vote. I think we can ask Brandy, I think we can request from OPA a possible extension. We can reach out today and see if that's possible and then move it to the next meeting.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. And I can discuss the annual report. It's really just a discussion on how you'd like to move forward, or we can push it once more to the next meeting. So that's what remains, and then the mayoral candidate.
Yeah, I have to hop off also because it's 11:30, but maybe we can talk about this at the beginning of the meeting next week so that it doesn't get pushed off again.
Yeah, my recommendation, I know it's been a long time coming, but I don't foresee it being any more barriers for us to get this information to you. You all have it. You all already have it technically. I would recommend that we give it the time that it deserves and move it to the next meeting.
All right.
That sounds good. And yeah, because I need to hop off too.
All right, well, I take my motion off the floor to extend the meeting then. So, all right.
All right, well, we want to thank everybody for joining us for today's meeting. Thank you for your patience and your grace. I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. The next meeting agenda will reflect the things that we were unable to cover today.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron, I'll give you a call.
Record.